In his hiring of Robert Livingston, did Deion Sanders make one of the best hires in college football? I think he did.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So make sure to like, subscribe, follow, all that jazz. I appreciate the support that you guys give me. Let's dive into my hot take for the day. I don't even think it's a hot take, really. I think Robert Livingston is one of the best hires of the coaching cycle. Now, obviously, there's a lot more out there that I'm maybe not as aware of. Like, you got to look at like Kane Womack of Alabama, the defense coordinator there. You look at other ones across the country where we're only six games into the season, depending on depending on which team. But there's been a lot of coaching improvements, I would say, in the realm of defense, specifically in Colorado. So let's just talk about it, because I saw this the other day and Robert Livingston was named as 24/7 Sports as one of their best coordinators of the week. And I wanted to sort of just highlight how much he's improved this defense. Now, granted, Colorado has played 5 games. They're 4-1, as we know. They have a bye week this week, and then they host Kansas State, number 20 Kansas State, next week for their first ranked matchup of the season. And so it's kind of like their biggest test of the year because they haven't played anybody who's been ranked while they've played them. Emphasis on while they've played them. Make sure we're listening. So I wanted to just sort of talk about, one, how risky of a hire was, 2, why I think it's paying off, and 3, I wanted to go over the differences. So riskiness of the hire. A lot of people, myself included, I won't say doubted this hire, but when I saw Robert Livingston announced as a defense coordinator, I was like, oh, that is interesting, because Coach Prime had sort of, at least maybe the rest of us weren't picking up, and don't pretend like you were. I don't think anyone was expecting Robert Livingston. Unless you knew, then by all means, more power to you. But he kept saying that his current defense coordinator, something along the lines of, was coaching right now, which was like the NFL playoffs were ongoing, or the NFL season was ending, something like that. So everyone was like, is he going to be a position coach off a playoff team, off like a Super Bowl team? Like, are they going to try to throw a lot of money at a defense coordinator who is, I don't know, maybe coaching for one of these teams? Like, what is the move here? And so they announced Robert Livingston. And Robert Livingston, while he played college football, he'd been around the league for a while. He'd been in the NFL in some capacity since 2012, right? So he's been in the NFL for a long, long time. And he's around all these great minds, and you don't get to stick around in the league that long and not be good at something, right? Like, it just doesn't work like that. I think there's a lot of people who want to sort of, I guess, diminish who he was because he hadn't done anything. No, you don't stick around in the NFL for over a decade by being bad, especially on one team, right? It's very hard to stick around in the NFL, let alone on the same team. And so he was with the Bengals from 2012 to 2023, and then he was hired as a defensive coordinator. And so the hiring, from my perspective, was risky in the sense of, not that I didn't think he was knowledgeable. Obviously, like I said, you don't stick around that long and not be knowledgeable, but because he had never coordinated the defense. And so I didn't know how that would look, right? And I don't think anyone did, except for maybe Coach Prime, who saw something there, right? Well, he's done well, and this is why I'm doing a segment about it. And there's just something that stood out to me that Cameron Slim Craig said the other day, and it was that when Robert Livingston got to Boulder, he came without a playbook. And so at first you're like, he came without a playbook. Like, does he know what he's talking about? And obviously Cameron didn't pause long enough for you to like conjure these thoughts up. But it's like, oh, you hear that and you're like, what? I'm sorry, pardon moi. That's about as much French as I know. And he said that Robert Livingston asked the team what they were good at and based off that. So as we've seen, they play a lot of man coverage. And why do they do that? Well, they have Travis Hunter, and they have Preston Hodge and DJ McKinney. They have 3 of the best corners in the Big 12 and 3 of the best corners maybe in college football. He has a lot better bodies in the front 7. His linebacker unit is ranks as two of the best linebackers in the run defense in the country. So he sort of, I won't say he didn't wing it, right? Because that takes away from his expertise and his amazing job so far. He didn't wing it, but he was like, I'm going to base it off this team and we'll sculpt it from there. And so does this tell me that he's just winging it? No, this tells me that he looks at his personnel and figured out what works. Now, last year with Charles Kelly, I don't want to say that Charles Kelly wasn't trying and wasn't qualified. Charles Kelly is a hell of a football coach. He knows what he's doing. He's been around Nick Saban for a large part of his career. He's one of the most respected coaches in the game. And I don't want to pretend like Robert Livingston doesn't have better players, because he does. But I just wonder if maybe there was a lack of willingness from Coach Kelly to sort of change things up. And this isn't me saying that there is. This is just me speculating. Maybe there was. Like, maybe he was like, this is the system that works and this is how we're going to do it. I don't care if we don't have another corner to complement Travis Hunter. I don't care that we don't have a good run defense, right? We're going to figure it out. And they didn't. So I think Robert Livingston's ability to adapt to what he has worked out. And so I wanted to compare some of the stats, because I think, and obviously we're 5 games into the season. I think I said 4 earlier. 5 games into the season. And none of this is concrete. It could get really good, or it could be or it could fall off. I doubt it will, because I do think that last year, this team's defense was never ranked highly in anything. It was just, I think the defense's weaknesses were being masked by how good the offense was. And then it also helped that at one point they were really high ranking in turnovers. So they were very boom or bust on defense. So let's look at where they rank based off of 2023. This is, like I said, through 5 games. So it's not the end all be all, but this is where we're currently at. In 2023, Colorado was giving up 35 points per game, right? That's not good at all. They were, I mean, it was an improvement from the year before, because they gave up 44.5, but that ain't going to do it. This year, points per game allowed, 22.3. I think that sort of shows that, one, the defense overall is better. We're not going to pretend it's not. 2, I think Robert Livingston may have some of the best second half adjustments. Like, let's listen to these stats, right? Or these numbers. It's not really stats, just facts. First game against North Dakota State, they gave 20 first half points. Second half, they gave 6. And honestly, probably shouldn't have. 6 points. Nebraska puts up 28 in the first half, give up 0. So through 2 weeks, they've given up 6 points in the second half, excuse me. Colorado State scored 6 points in the second half. So now we're at 12 second half points. Baylor, which this one got a little bit dicey for Colorado early. They gave up 24 first half points, 7 second half points. So now we're at 13. Or no, I can't do math. Now we're at 19. Sorry. 6 plus 6 equals 19. So yeah, they've given up 19 points. And then UCF this past week, 7. So 25 points in the second half this season. So what does this tell me about Robert Livingston? Well, he makes adjustments, and not just every team makes adjustments at halftime. No team. I saw this. I forgot who said it. It was a former NFL coach. It might have been Bill Belichick, if I'm not mistaken. Could be wrong, but it was someone along those lines. Former NFL coach for sure. Or was it just coaches in general? I think it was a coaches in general, an NFL documentary I was watching, where it was like, or a show I was watching, where it was like, the second half adjustments aren't as like important as people think they are. Like, they do make adjustments, but it's not like, at least at the NFL level, you're not changing everything in 15 minutes. But Robert Livingston is definitely making some changes out there. And I think the ability for Colorado to shut people down in the second half has really helped their offense, because their offense at times has been sort of slow, not super slow, but they've had slow moments. And so when you know that your defense just clamps down in the second half, opens a lot of doors for you to sort of pick things up. Passing yards per game, Colorado ranks 84th in the country this season at 223 per game. Last year, they were giving up 296, so about 70-ish less yards passing. Rushing yards per game, this is a big one, excuse me. Rushing yards per game, 2023, 168. This year, 156 per game. And I think the run defense is a major reason why they are what they are. I think the number is probably skewed a little bit because UCF put up 175 on them. And UCF, granted, number one rushing team in the country, they were averaging like 375 per game or something like that. So Colorado's run defense has really taken them to the next level, and it sort of takes away a safety blanket, if you will, from every team. And so it makes you have to throw the ball. And when you have to throw the ball, you're doing so against Travis Hunter. You're doing so against Preston Hodge. So it's not like you're just throwing it against scrubs. Like if you compare this secondary, these corners from this year to last year, where it was Travis Hunter or Marion Cooper, Travis J sometimes, Cormon McLean sometimes, and now it's Preston Hodge and DJ McKinney. A lot better. It's a lot better. Big difference. So moving on, turnovers is another stat that I think is important. Colorado forced 20 last year. They're at 9 through 5 games, and obviously, I think it's kind of weird because they have 9, so it's like, oh, 5 games, they're probably averaging like 2.5 per, right? No, they're actually averaging basically, oh gosh, they're averaging a lot. They're averaging, I think but all their turnovers come in 2 games, so it's 4 and 4, or yeah. 4 and 4. I don't know why they're listed at 9. I think they have 8 or 9. But either way, all the turnovers have come from the same games. So it was Colorado State, UCF. So if they could continue to force turnovers, it doesn't always have to be 4 a game. It'd be nice, right? Imagine getting 4 extra possessions for Shedeur Sanders. That'd be great. But this defense is just one, and I talked about with Dalton yesterday, flying to the ball at all times, much better in the run, and then they have a really good secondary. And so you sort of have to respect this defense a lot more. Last year, I think teams could just out-physical them. They could just do whatever they wanted. It's like, okay, we're going to beat Colorado with the run game today. And they did. Or they'd be like, you know what? We're just going to pick on one of the secondary members. And they did. Like, this defense has more energy, more passion. They're just more hats to the ball. And they're just in the right place at the right time. It seems like all the time. So Robert Livingston, pat yourself on the back. I do think that he's probably going to be a future head coach. I don't know how long Colorado's going to have him, to be honest. But he's doing a great job. And I think that he's got to get a lot of credit for this turnaround that we've seen through Colorado's first few games. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. And let me tell you about FanDuel. NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com to get in on the action. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. I appreciate you guys tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow. We're basically right at 6,000 subscribers, which is an awesome, awesome accomplishment. This podcast has been around for about a year-ish, I think. We started around the time Coach Prime was hired, or a little bit after. It was me and John Garcia, and we're now just continuing to grow. We're 460 episodes in, which is so cool to see. So I appreciate all the support that you guys give me, and can't wait to watch this show continue to grow. Let's talk about Cam Newton, Shedeur Sanders, and I think there's a lot of confusion with this, and it sort of brings me back to what's his name? The reporter, Sean, I believe Sean Keeler, I want to say, from the Post, who was writing about Coach Prime. Obviously, this is a little bit different, and this isn't to bring Sean down by any means. This is just an equal scenario that I would consider, or it's just a scenario that I see as somewhat similar. So if you guys didn't see, Cam Newton was on the field before the game, and he went to go talk to Shedeur Sanders, and nobody had the audio, or at least not at the time, which we knew that Deion Sanders Jr. or someone from the well-off media team would get it, because that's what they do. They're the best in the business at sort of getting those behind-the-scenes moments, and it's one of those things where Cam Newton goes up to Shedeur Sanders, and he's trying to talk to him, right? And Shedeur says something to him and walks away, and Cam Newton sort of was like, oh, he said I'm like on some weird stuff. And it's like, yeah, because let's see. Let me pull up what he said. So to summarize, sorry, I was going to play the video, but it's so long. To summarize, Cam Newton was talking about Shedeur Sanders prior to the game against UCF, and they were talking about a comparison between him and someone else, and I was just talking about how good he was, and he was one of Cam's arguments for Shedeur, sort of diminishing him. He kept saying that he likes him and that he likes the Sanders family, but he kept diminishing what Shedeur has done. He says he doesn't have any wins, right? He doesn't have any big moments in college football, kind of like shooting down what Shedeur has done. And then he also said that he's not likable, said that there's no reason to sort of support him, and that was kind of like the whole thing with Cam Newton was like he didn't have the best things to say about Shedeur Sanders. Right? Okay, so I found the audio. I'll play it for you guys because I definitely didn't want to describe it wrong. But this is Cam Newton talking about Shedeur Sanders prior to the UCF game. I'm going to put it into the speaker and sort of let it go at it. So if you're watching, I'm just going to be sitting here staring for a quick second. But here it goes.
Look, my whole thing with Shedeur is this: what win can he hang? Like, what performance
can you hang your hat on?
Can you hang your hat on in college?
Yeah,
we're talking about TCU,
and
they ended up not being a good team.
That's true.
Which it was just that the silence there is him just looking at the camera. And then he also said that Shedeur is not likable. Said that people, if he asked 10 people, more people would say that Travis is likable. And so when he goes up to Shedeur Sanders before the Colorado UCF game and tries to talk to him, and Shedeur Sanders tells him, "Hey, you're on some weird stuff." Use a different S word, but it's a family program. We can't use that word. And he said that he didn't really want to talk to him, not there. And Cam Newton made like this whole ordeal, or not like a whole ordeal about it, but he made this weird thing like Shedeur was disrespecting him. And it's like, you can't, I don't get, and this is why I compared it to the Deion Sanders situation with the reporter. You can't talk about someone however you want. I mean, you can, freedom of speech, right? First Amendment, almost said the Second Amendment. First Amendment, right? RAPS, I believe is what it was, freedom of religion and whatever, press, petition, all that speech, and assembly, I think, is the A. And look at my econ teacher would be so proud, I think. Hopefully, I don't know. But you can't talk about someone however you want, slam them, sort of say they've accomplished nothing, talk about how no one likes them, and then when he doesn't want to talk to you, be upset. It doesn't work like that. I promise you it doesn't. And so this weird sort of like Cam Newton versus Shedeur beef is very one-sided. I think Shedeur Sanders, if anything, of all the Sanders family members, he's shown that he will hold a grudge, right? He doesn't remember, or he doesn't forget, what Braden Fowler-Nicolsi said on Colorado State. He didn't like what Matt Rule had said about his dad or how he was running the program last year. Didn't like Nebraska staying on the field. He does not like, if you come for him or his family, he will remember. And so for this whole like thing to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's mad at Cam Newton or whatever. It's like, why would he want to talk to Cam Newton after what he said? So it shocks me how people get upset or sort of shocked, if you will, that athletes, specifically Colorado athletes, don't want to talk to people who are consistently bashing them. And I think that was a prime example of that. So that's my take on the matter. When it comes down to it, you can talk about people however you want. Again, the old saying that comes into play is treat others how you want to be treated. So if you talk about others and it's not kindly, don't be surprised when they're not jumping at the gun, jumping at the whatever it's called. Well, you know the saying, chomping at the bit. There it is, to want to talk to you. And I think maybe Cam Newton learned that lesson the hard way. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some of the latest recruiting news for the Colorado Buffaloes. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. I greatly appreciate the support that you guys give. Couldn't have done this podcast without you. Let's talk some recruiting. Colorado, here's what you need to know. They're making some moves, right? Byron Baldwin backed off his Indiana pledge. Colorado is the favorite to land him. Then you got Carday Smith, right? Who USC commit, 4-star offensive tackle, who's sort of I want to say a need for Colorado, but you have a lot of probably departures from this offensive line. I'm sure Khalil Benson is leaving, and all these guys are going to be leaving. And Carday Smith, 4-star, ranks as a 26th player at his position. He just got a crystal ball projection in favor of Colorado. So Colorado is expected to flip them. And then, not to mention, a couple of guys who have backed off of their pledges from respective programs have decided to take a peek at Colorado. One of them, pull him up here, he was a former UCF commit, and all of a sudden he visits Colorado, and he has this sort of, I guess, infatuation with Colorado, maybe. We'll kind of see. But yeah, I think that visit, like Philip Duke said on the show last week, there was a lot of people who were going to that game not for UCF. And it was one of those things where Colorado is definitely going to make some noise. For instance, Christian Hudson, currently a UCF commit, he is taking a visit to Boulder. What does this tell you? Well, it tells us that Coach Prime and them made a lasting impression. For those of you not familiar with Christian, he is a high 3-star defensive line recruit, 6'1", 280, committed to UCF, has offers from Colorado, Maryland, Iowa State, the whole thing, the whole shebang. And then also a receiver backed off his commitment from Florida State. He got an offer from Colorado like right away. So that's another person to look out for. Let me find his name real quick. I'm scrolling on my little note page here. Malik Clark from South Carolina, decommitted from Florida State yesterday and got an offer pretty much right after. So Colorado's making some moves in the recruiting ranks. I imagine this class is going to continue to grow, and I'm really interested to see how much they invest into this class, because obviously transfers are great, but recruits are the foundation of your program. So I look to see the more they get, the better that this foundation of the program is. So it's very exciting to see what Colorado's up to. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. I will see you guys tomorrow. Make sure to comment questions, comments, whatever. I'm going to start doing Mailbag Fridays again. So if you have a question about Colorado or a certain topic in college football, comment it below, ask it, say your take, and I'll go over some of them, and we're going to have a ball. So that way you guys can sort of feel like you're included in the show as well. So that way we can have some fun. I'll make sure to shout you out as long as it's appropriate. I appreciate all the support that you guys give me. See you guys tomorrow. This has been another episode of Locked On Buffs.